I'll turn on the YouTube live so everyone can watch.
Yeah, we'll have people joining in the next 3 to 4 minutes.
Okay.
4 minutes, yeah.
Seeing some familiar faces. Mahesh Panditji, Dhanyavads.
Mahesh Pandit Prabhu is one of the pillars of the Sangha. He's always there.
Of course.
Single session. Very
And Yadanath and Ekanta are also here.
Of course, them too, I see. Kikoji.
Okay, so we can get started now. I think it's time.
Okay.
So Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for joining this evening on our ISKCON of New Jersey Towaco Sangha. We have today a very special speaker, His Grace Kaustubha Prabhu. Kaustubha Prabhu is a wonderful devotee who has a way of making the teachings and practices of Bhakti Yoga very approachable and relevant. He serves as a board member and also a senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, in Manhattan. And he is the co-host of a podcast known as Wisdom of the Sages. Now, this is podcast world famous and has been ranked #1 in the world of Apple Podcasts in the category of religion and spirituality. So Kaustubha Prabhu, along with Raghunath Prabhu, they co-host a podcast, and it has thousands of downloads on a daily basis. So, it's really something quite astonishing. And now, between the age of 21 and 34, Prabhuji lived as a Vaishnava monk, and then he was traveling, he was studying in ashrams in India and here in the US, and distributed Srila Prabhupada's books. He is an initiated disciple of His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and he's very well respected and quite famous in the circles of yoga for his very deep and practical talks on Krishna Bhakti. And so it gives us great pleasure to welcome Kaustubha Prabhu, and tonight's topic is also very, very pertinent. The topic is how, the point of Kartik, the month of Kartik, and saturating our mind in Krishna consciousness in this special month. So with that, welcome Kaustubha Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for that overly generous. You embellished that bio. I feel bad enough sending my bio over to anyone, but then you went in further embellished it. But thank you for that kind introduction. And it's an honor to be here with everyone this evening as we enter into this most special of months, the month that's so dear to Lord Krishna, the month of Kartik. I thought I would begin by there's 2 verses I thought I would read. The first verse I want to read is the very first verse that begins the Damodar Leela. So this would be Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 9, which is which begins the description of Mother Yashoda binding Lord Krishna, and this is the first 2 verses from that. I'll just read the translation. Here's the translation. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, one day, when Mother Yashoda saw that all the maidservants were engaged in other household affairs, she personally began to churn the yogurt. While churning, she remembered the childish activities of Krishna. And in her own way, she composed songs and enjoyed singing to herself about all those activities. Right? This is the mind of Mother Yashoda, right? That she's engaged in serving Krishna by churning the yogurt. While she's churning the yogurt, she's naturally thinking about him. And then it's mentioned here, how did it go? Smarti. That she remembered Lord Krishna's pastimes. And in remembering him, with her mind absorbed in him, she spontaneously, naturally composed songs and enjoyed singing to herself, not to anybody else. There was no audience. There was no fame to be gained by this. There's no money to be gained by this. There's nothing to be gained except this is just the pleasure that her mind took. She sang to herself about all those activities. This is the consciousness of Goloka Vrindavan that begins to describe the the Damodar Lila. Now I'll read you another verse. This verse is the last verse of another very important, two maybe the most famous pastimes, two of the most important, often chanted about, often spoken of pastimes. Now this is the last verse of the Govardhan Lila. End, right? And in the end, after Krishna puts the hill back down, and then, all of the residents of Vrindavan, they circumambulate that hill. And then it's just like a bright day, and they all they don't even exactly go home. They just kind of go about their activities like nothing happened. And so this is the last verse of that description. It reads, surrounded by his loving cowherd friend, Krishna then went off to the place where he had been tending the cows. Now, this is the part I want you to hear. The cowherd girls returned to their homes, singing joyfully about the lifting of Govardhan Hill and other glorious deeds performed by Lord Krishna, who had so deeply touched their hearts. Right? What a beautiful verse. I mean, this is the last verse of that entire long description of the Govardhan Lila. Is that the basically what happens is the cowherd girls go out and do Harinam. They do kirtan, singing songs about Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill. They had just seen it, and then they felt inspired to sing about it. And this is the consciousness that is actually inherent to the soul. It's this consciousness that devotees of Krishna as the very goal of life. Now, when Sri Chaitanya, he left Puri and he went to go on his tour of South India with Ramananda Roy by the Godavari River. And there's one verse, many beautiful verses, many important verses that he spoke to Sri Chaitanya. But this one verse becomes very important.
Hey, Kaustubha Prabhu. So sorry to interrupt. Kaustubha ji.
Yes?
Sorry. Your internet might be breaking up because your voice and video are both freezing.
Oh.
I don't know.
I wish I knew what to do about that, but I don't know what I could do.
Well, because this is the same place from where you do your podcast, right? The podcast comes out just fine every day.
Yeah. I don't know. Are you sure it's me?
Do you have the router in a different room?
No, it's in the same room.
Oh, really? So that's not it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why that would be. I'm sorry about that.
Not breaking up. What about like not using the microphone, just using straight from the regular computer? Like,
you think that would help?
Because we had the same issue a couple of weeks ago.
You can try.
So let's see if that helps. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It seems like an internet thing, but let's see. Perhaps this might help. Because it was fine for the first couple of minutes, for the first few minutes it was fine, and then now it's kind of breaking up. So I'm not sure what it is.
Okay, is this any better? Or does it sound okay? Can you hear me well?
Sound is good, but let's try it for a few minutes and see if it internet still, it might be an internet thing. If it's internet, there's not much we can do about it. So
all right, and let me just say if I can hear you. Okay. So I was reading a verse, and this is a verse that was spoken by Ramananda Roy to Sri Chaitanya. And mentioned later, centuries later, would have a historical importance. And that is Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati Kriyatam Yari Kutopi Labhyate Tatra Laoyam apimulyam ekalam, janma koti sukter nalabjate. That pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be had even by pious activity in hundreds of thousands of lives. It can be attained only by paying one price. That is the intense greed to obtain it. If it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay. And there's the phrase here, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati. That Srila Prabhupada said that it's actually this phrase that he translated as Krishna consciousness. Right? That the mind become absorbed in Krishna Bhakti Rasa. Right? Now, in the commentary to this verse, Prabhupada he writes this. He says, the regulative principles, according to the injunctions of Shastra, are necessary insofar as one's original dormant Krishna consciousness is not spontaneously awakened. So for the vast majority of us practitioners, the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga become so important. Now he gives an example of someone with that what that spontaneous consciousness is like. He says, an example of spontaneous action is the flowing of rivers into the ocean. Nothing can stop this flow of water. Similarly, when one's dormant Krishna consciousness is awakened, it spontaneously flows to the lotus feet of Krishna without impediment. Now this is, we, vast majority of us, find ourselves in that first category, right? We're not so much like Mother Yashoda, who's always absorbed in thinking of Krishna. She's naturally spontaneously composing songs about Krishna. When she's doing her work around the home, she's always absorbed in thinking of Krishna and his pastimes. The cowherd girls, right? They can't stop thinking about Krishna even if they try, right? They're also naturally wandering around. Their hearts are just so infused, absorbed, completely consumed by thinking of Krishna all the time that they naturally want to sing songs about him and glorify him. That is where their mind is at. Their mind is saturated in Krishna, Krishna Bhakti Rasa, right? All the time. Now we find ourselves distracted by so many things, right? We find ourselves disturbed by so many things, and that in the mind is, if we're lucky, if we can bring it to Krishna even a little bit. Sometimes we have to struggle to try to get it there. Sometimes we're trying to bring it there and we have no taste for it, but we're just bringing it there anyway. But we try. And in this month, we're granted special mercy. Right? And this month, the month itself, the month of Damodar, is so charming. Right? There's something about it that's so beautiful and charming that it can capture the heart of someone that's even distracted, someone that's even caught up in all of the weaknesses that we tend to carry with us, different attachments that we have, different fears that we maintain, the anger, that so much consumes our minds. We have such a difficult time focusing on Krishna, but in this month, there's a special charm, and it's a month that's fully dedicated to developing this remembrance. Right? We sing a song. We sing the song every day, right? As part of our Kartik Vrata, as part of our vow. And it said there that iti drikshvali lavya ananda kunde svagosha nimajantam. That these super excellent pastimes of Lord Krishna's babyhood, they drowned the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy. Right? I mean, it's metaphorical, but it's not like exaggeration. It's like they were drowned. And, we were using the word saturate. Something soaks in something completely until it's like it's fully absorbed. It's entirely full of what it's been absorbed in. Right? That's the consciousness we're aiming for. That's the consciousness that every one of us should have the faith. If we really sincerely try to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions, that we could become the recipient of Krishna's mercy and be granted this consciousness. consciousness. It's like Ramanuja. He had a term, Dhruvanusmriti, or he used the term in any case, Dhruvanusmriti. This firm remembrance. He said it's like the pouring of a thick pouring of oil. You know, that oil just when you pour a real thick stream of it, right? It's not like it just when it lets the entire thing, right? So that our mind becomes like that. It flows to Krishna's lotus feet, and it just becomes just fully absorbed in that. Now, each one of us, we're made of Krishna's energy. Right? We are composed of the energy of Krishna, but somehow we become confused. Somehow we become forgetful. Somehow we become tricked by the material energy. And we think that we're going to, this is the craziest thing, but we think that we're going to find happiness through something external. We think, we become confused, we become convinced, we become really thoroughly convinced that we need something external and temporary to connect with our sense to find the happiness that we naturally are searching for. This illusion Krishna describes in the 15th chapter. He uses right? Prakriti stani karshati. That we're in this world and we're struggling with it. We're looking for that happiness, but it's not coming. Because when the mind becomes absorbed in that which is material, it's satisfied. It may find some temporary pleasure, some temporary satisfaction, but it doesn't. As long as we're working hard, we're struggling to manipulate this material energy, thinking that we can, if we were to change it a little bit like this or a little bit like that, then we're going to find that happiness that we're looking for. That struggle continues. And it's up to us to wise up. It's up to us to leave that struggle behind and take up a different kind of, you could call it a struggle, but a different kind of journey. And that is the journey to bring my mind to the lotus feet of Krishna. Right? In the beginning, I may not have the taste, but like the jaundiced patient, right, who's eating that sugar candy, gradually that flavor will return. And so, therefore, we need to take up strategies, right? Our acharyas, they carefully consider how it is that we can advance, how we can take a mind that's saturated with materialism, that's saturated with attachments, that's saturated with fear, that's saturated with anger, and how that mind can become transformed into one that's saturated with Krishna's pastimes. How do we get from point A to point B? And that involves the regulative practice of bhakti yoga. And so therefore we develop strategies. And one of my mentors, he shared this idea with me once, and it's something that I keep with me for my whole life. He said that we need to devote ourselves exclusively to Krishna, exclusively. But we have so many different circumstances that we find ourselves in. We have families to provide for, and we have responsibilities that are apparently important, and so on. So how are we going to get to that point where our mind is exclusively absorbed in Krishna? So what he said was, you take a day composed of 24 hours. Certain hours of the day should be devoted exclusively to Lord Krishna. Okay? And then you take those days and you look at the month and you say certain days of the month should be devoted exclusively to Lord Krishna. And then you look at the year and you say certain months, or at least a month of the year, should be devoted exclusively to Lord Krishna. And then you look at the lifetime and you say certain years of the life should be devoted exclusively to Lord Krishna. That's part of the strategy. That's part of how we practice Bhakti Yoga. And so this month is a month, maybe we all know people who are fortunate and they say every year Kartik, I go to Vrindavan, I go to Govardhan, I go to Mayapur, I go someplace where I can devote that month exclusively to Lord Krishna. Now, many people can't do that just because of the circumstances. But at the very least, we should make this month very special. This is the month that's so dear to Lord Krishna. So many of his pastimes happen this month, and for his own personal reasons, this month is so dear to him. Right? And how we practice bhakti during this month is part of that strategy. It's recorded in the Shastras how one practices it. You can find in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. And the Hari Bhakti Vilas is going back to different Skanda Purana and different Puranas and all that, speaking about Kartik and how it should be practiced. So it's recorded in the Shastras and it's followed by the sadhus, right? And then it's carefully handed down by Guru, how one practice, how one can practice in this month. And if we look at those teachings, we'll find that certain things are recommended if we want to take that mind that's absorbed in its material attachments and transform it. Now, one thing is mentioned, and it's mentioned again and again: one regularly bathe in the morning, and then one worship Lord Damodar, right? Especially offering the lamp is mentioned. It's also mentioned that one should give in charity. And it's also mentioned that one should follow vows. Especially these things are mentioned: rising early and bathing, worshiping Lord Damodar, particularly with the lamp, giving in charity, right? Giving in charity. This is mentioned in the Shastras. This is mentioned by the Acharyas. And following vows. Right? Following vows. And then other activities are mentioned as well, like chanting japa, associating with the Vaishnavas, performing yagnas. These are all mentioned. But somehow especially this following of vows, this taking up vratas in this month. If one doesn't do, even if you, quite frankly, if you read the descriptions that are in the Shastra, if one doesn't follow this, if one doesn't take up vows in this month, it's really considered bad news. Right? There's like, the way that the Hari Bhakti Vilas speaks about it, it's not, it's not something that you want to avoid. But really looking at it from the positive, these vows are so special. These vows are the way that we transform our mind. Our vratas, you can read throughout Shastra about following vratas, and so many of the descriptions describe someone trying to gain power through vratas. Our mission is not to gain any kind of particular power, but our vratas are there to help us penetrate deeper into that Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhagatamati, into that just trying to take that distracted mind and allow it to be absorbed. Allow it to absorb itself. It just like anything that you might like throw into water, different things, if you throw a paper towel into water, it becomes saturated. But there are other things that you could drop into water and they take time. It takes time for them to soak. It has a thicker exterior that it has to soak in there for a while, but after enough time, it begins to penetrate it. And our goal is really that our love for Krishna will actually manifest when we can bring that mind and absorb it. The holy name of Krishna is not different from Krishna himself. We chant that name every day. If it's not different from Krishna himself, if it's all powerful, then why are we not immediately transformed? And why do we chant the name and not have the hairs of our body stand on end. And why, when we chant the name, do we not? Why does our voice not choke up and tears come from our eyes, and we feel the genuine type of emotion that the residents of Vrindavan feel when we chant that name? It's because our mind has yet to become absorbed in it. Our mind's distracted. Right? We're weak. We're very weak. This month is a special kindness given to us by Krishna. It's a special opportunity that if we just take this month and dedicate something extra at this time, right? Take the mind and absorb it in this beautiful song, the Damodara Rastika. What, just poetically, absolutely beautiful, absolutely charming message in it, and a philosophical, philosophy presented in just an absolutely beautiful and charming way in that song. That song can become dear to the heart, right? And as we perform that song, we have the opportunity to offer a lamp, and to watch others offer a lamp, and to gaze upon the forms of Radha and Krishna. And by doing this, not once, not every now and then, but every day during this period, right? That this is the kind of meditation with regulation that can begin to penetrate the mind, begin to soften it up, right? Soften the mind, soften the heart, and hopefully gradually receive a drop of that mercy, so that when we move throughout our day, we're like the gopis, like Madhya Yashoda, we're thinking of Krishna. We want to sing a song about Krishna. Our mind naturally becomes absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, right? More and more, right? We have so many years left in our life. We don't know how many. It may be 1, it may be 10, it may be 20, it may be 30. That's so many. I'm getting older now. Like I'm in my mid-50s now. So you do the calculation. There's not so many left. How many more Kartiks will I have? But this period becomes an opportunity to really practice it, to really just become absorbed in it, to really begin to feel something. We may not have that intense greed that Ramananda Roy spoke of, by which one could purchase that Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati. Right? But we can give something. We can give what we have. We may not have that intense greed, but we can give our time. Right? Even if it's a few minutes a day to sing that song, even if it's 20 minutes to read, from Krishna's Leelas from the Krishna book. Even if it's just every morning and every evening I go in and spend a few minutes to offer a lamp. We can give our time, and we can give our body, that we move it to that place. Now we're kind of all stuck in our homes for the most part, but that we move our body to that place where we hear these pastimes, where we see the form of Krishna. We have our words, right? That we speak words that are full of descriptions of Krishna's Leelas. And ultimately we have the mind, that we say, Krishna, this mind which I could dedicate in so many places, in so many different ways, I give it to you, right? I want you to take it. I don't want to invest it in other places. I want to invest it entirely in you. This month is meant to cultivate that attitude. This month is, it's just full of constant reminders, constant opportunity to take that mind and absorb it very deeply, in everything that we read, and everything that we sing, and everything that we hear about. This is, as I'm growing older, and I've been trying to practice bhakti for some time, it's become my firmer conclusion that, in one sense, it's not so hard to perform a lot of the duties that I've been given in bhakti yoga. If one decides they want to do it, they can make the choice and they can do it. If I decide I want to wake up in the morning early, I can wake up in the morning early. If I'm supposed to chant 16 rounds because I've taken a vow. I can choose to do that and do it. And then there's, so that's duty. And then there's knowledge. There's certain things that I need to know. I need to know the position of Sri Krishna as the Ishvara, as the Paramishvara, as the Purushottama. I need to understand my position as a jiva, dependent on Krishna, part and parcel of Krishna. I need to understand the nature of the material world, that it's another external energy of Krishna, that it's that it has the power to confuse or thrust me into illusion, and so on. There's basic, Achincha Veda, Veda, Tattva, and all these. I can learn that philosophy, right? So duty, I can take up. Knowledge, I can choose to learn it. But for that knowledge to become deeper, to the point where we could call it wisdom, for that knowledge to mature, to the point where I move through this world as a wise person, and I would define that as one, as no matter what the external situation is, my mind can remain peaceful and satisfied, right? That's something that I can't just choose to do. That's something that that has to mature in me, that has to arise in me, that I need to be blessed with, to be able to, whether it's hot or cold, whether I'm being honored or dishonored, no matter what the external circumstance is, that my mind remain even. Now that's a mind that can begin to become absorbed, right? That's a mind, as long as I'm not there, right? As long as I'm not there, then it's gonna be hard to absorb my mind in anything. It's gonna naturally be distracted constantly because I am dependent on the externals for my happiness. Then whatever changes there are in the external world, and because it's the material energy, its nature is that it's always changing, then my consciousness is always going to be changing with it, right? I'm being praised today, oh, well, everything's good. I'm being dishonored tomorrow, oh no, now I'm upset and I'm angry and I'm disturbed. And with that mind, I can never absorb it in that name. I can never fully absorb it in the past times. I can't, the super potency that's in them is not penetrating and it's not becoming saturated. So reaching that stage of even-mindedness, and from that platform of wisdom, being able to see the soul in every living being and the super soul in every living being, right? So that we're not seeing the world as, I have this person is my friend, this person is my enemy. I'm attracted to this person, I'm repulsed by that person, right? All of this is going to distract our mind from being absorbed in the holy name as well. It'll never get there as long as, until we come to that platform where we can see the soul in every living being, whether they're kind to us or not so kind, whether they appear to be someone that's very cultured and well-behaved or someone that's not so much. The Gita is telling us to see them all equally, right? To see the soul in each one. And if we can't come to that level, if we can't mature to that level, then it's going to be very hard to absorb the mind, because we're going to be affected by how we judge and how we relate to all of these people. So coming to that stage of wisdom is the stage that's going to open up absorption for us, and absorption is going to open up prema for us. Right? It's again, it's when that mind, Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, they're all non-different from him. There's no limit to the potency or the power of any of those manifestations of Krishna. Just like the sun is very powerful, right? There's no lack of power. Like say we want to get a suntan. The sun has the power to do it. But if we don't take the opportunity to absorb ourselves in the rays of the sun, then it won't have any effect. Or if we're kind of underneath a tree and we're blocking it in some way, or underneath a cloud or indoors, the sun is still up there shining as bright as ever. But we need to absorb ourselves in the rays of that sun. And in a similar way, Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, there's no lack of their power to transform us. There's no lack of their power to bestow upon us bhava and prema. Our weakness is that we have the inability to become deeply absorbed. And that's why I find that these instructions that Krishna is giving in the Gita, they speak to me more and more as I read them and stick with them and age. And when I look at his instructions, I find that really I could sum so much of it up with just like 2 words. And they are to live very simply, right? To be satisfied very simply, right? And that means if I'm satisfied simply, I'm naturally tolerant. If I'm satisfied simply, I'm naturally humble, right? If I'm satisfied simply, I have that even-mindedness under any circumstance. I don't need so much. Right? I don't need so much to be happy. To live simply and to be very kind, right? To be kind to every living entity. If I'm not kind to every living entity, it's going to create great disturbance in my own mind, right? It's going to create anxiety and fear in my own mind. It's going to create anger in my own mind. So if I can move through this world, being satisfied simply, and if I can move through this world, seeing the soul in every living being and coming forward naturally from a platform of kindness, then that mind is going to start to settle. It's going to settle more and more and more and more. And just like if you have a pond, but if the mud in that pond is all stirred up, then you can't see through the water. But with time and a certain stillness, that mud, it'll just settle until the water's perfectly clear, right? And through moving through this world, just trying to be satisfied simply, right? Trying to develop that natural taste, trying to acquire the taste for happiness through the simple things in life. Letting go of the idea that I need anything too elaborate, that things need to go exactly the way I want them to go. It starts to settle. And by being very kind, trying to be very kind to every living being, seeing every living being as a friend, seeing every living being as connected to Lord Krishna and therefore worthy of my respect, worthy of my kindness, then that'll settle, right? As long as we're unkind, as long as we're striving for something extra, we don't really need to be happy, but we become convinced we want it. We become convinced we'll be happier with it. It's just stirring it up, stirring up that lake, stirring up the mud. But that simplicity and the kindness of the sadhu, it just settles until it becomes clear. And when our mind becomes clear like that, then when we chant that name, it'll ring in our mind, it'll ring in our heart, it'll be fully absorbed and transformed by it. And when we hear the pastimes of Krishna, we will become so deeply moved by them, so completely charmed by them, that we'll never forget them. They'll be in our mind all the time, 24 hours a day, just like Mother Yashoda, right? When she goes and she's churning that yogurt, she's singing a song about Krishna. When the gopis, when they're walking, they're singing the songs about the Krishna, And we hear in the Gita's texts in the 4th chapter, what is it? Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatpataha tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mameti sarjana. That one who knows the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and his activities, his pastimes, his leelas, upon leaving the body, they do not take their birth again in this material world, but they attain Krishna's eternal abode. They enter into Krishna's pastimes. And the next verse, it speaks so much to what I'm sharing, is that Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha manmaya mamupashritaha bahavo jnanatapasa bhuta madbhavam agataha. That being freed from attachment, fear, and anger. Right? Being freed from them. Right? And that comes through that simple, being satisfied simply by being very kind. If we live in that way, we can become free from attachment. We can become free from fear. We can become free from anger. Being free from attachment, fear, and anger. Being fully absorbed in me, right? And taking refuge in me. Many, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they attained transcendental love for me. This is our path. And this is the month, you know, if we can't be absorbed like this all year round, if we have trouble, if we're lazy, if our schedules are difficult, whatever it may be. But this month provides that opportunity to say, okay, you know what? This entire month, I do this every day. Let me take a little vow, right? Let me read Krishna book every evening. Let me offer a lamp every day. Let me make extra effort not to criticize another devotee. Let me, whatever it may be, right? We make a vow and we begin to learn that actually I'm happier in that month, right? We'll always have our distraction. We'll always have our, the material energy is pulling us this way and that way. But by doing it year after year, we can realize that's the happiest month of the year. When I was actually following more, you know, when I was like dedicated my time and I dedicated my energy towards Krishna, actually that's what gave me the happiness. And in this way, it becomes part of that strategy, a very effective, potent part of that strategy, and 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 um, and beyond even that strategy is the understanding that, and Krishna blesses us extra and extra and extra if we do it in this month, just for his own personal reason, right? Because he wants to grant some mercy, because this month is so dear to him, that he gives us this opportunity. So I think that if we were able to look at ourselves, if we were able to view ourselves from the perspective of the devas, or from the perspective of the residents of Vaikuntha, we would look at ourselves and say, what an opportunity they have. They don't even realize how special that opportunity is. They're told how special that opportunity is, but they live as if it weren't true, right? They hear the truth that if they just perform any devotional activities in this month, it's magnified 1,000 times. It's so potent, it's so valuable. They're so fortunate if they take the opportunity. They're so fortunate that the opportunity that they're given. We need to have faith in that. We need to realize that. And if we take it up to some degree or other, we'll start to feel it and we'll feel encouraged. So I'm speaking mostly for myself here. I feel fortunate to be with all of you tonight, to be able to spend, I guess you could call it the second night or the first night of Kartika, either way you want to put it. Right? Last night got us started with the full moon, and today's the first full day. But I thank you all for being here with me this evening. And I'm just one small, insignificant little jiva that's trying to become absorbed, and I appreciate being here with all of you to help me. So Yashodulal Prabhu, when he asked me to speak here, I was honored. And he mentioned that I might leave the last 15 minutes or so for questions or discussion. So I'd be happy to do that. And if Madam Gopal Prabhu, if you'd like to moderate, I'd be happy to serve in any way that I can.
Thank you very much, Kaustubha Prabhu. I must say that the whole presentation was so uplifting and soothing to the soul.
Oh, too kind.
It's actually very sweet, and it's a reminder of this opportunity that we should dedicate 1 hour, 1 day, a particular month, and then a whole section of our life, to Krishna, and then a whole lifetime to Krishna. Why not? It's really sweet. Thank you, Prabhu. A gentle but powerful reminder of what's really important. in our existence. So Yashoda Dulal Prabhu had a question or comment. Go ahead, Prabhu. Yashoda Dulal Prabhu.
Thank you, Kaustubha Prabhu. That was really nourishing. I really, I learned so much. I was taking notes on my computer as you were speaking. And I love that mentors advice to you, 1 day and 1 week and 1 month and, so on and so forth. So I'm going to take stock like that. I will say, to people who are listening and who will watch later on YouTube as well, I've known Kaustubha for like 2 decades now, and he practices what he preaches. So, living simply and really dedicating your life to Krishna, that's Kaustubha Prabhu. So, that's why your words have so much potency, to be honest. I did have a question. My question was, Kartik this month or this year has providentially fallen right around election time, which is giving major anxieties, I know to me and I know to a lot of people. Regardless of which side of the fence you're on, it's giving anxieties to people. Now, as a devotee, I know, or as an aspiring devotee, I know that I should absorb myself fully in Krishna consciousness during this month, but I'm trying not to look at the news sites and so on. But what would you recommend, especially with this period that's coming up next week?
I suppose I should have expected that question, right? Because which I'm happy to take. I'll speak on this, but I may speak even more broadly than like the way, specifically what you asked. I have mixed feelings about where we're at as a nation, and even where we're at globally right now. On one hand, I look at our situation and I say, we have become so degraded. We have become so foolish that we are entirely incapable of what to speak of find suitable leaders. We're even incapable of discussing it. We're even incapable of respectfully talking about it. We are in a big mess right now. Our and not just our nation, but nations around the world. We are destroying the earth. We are completely distracted from how to live as whatever our religion may be or whatever our morality may be. We're not living up to it. And I think that this is, a really powerful era of the Kali Yuga that we're living in right now. As far as I can see in my, 55 years or so, I can't remember things being so, just being so disappointed in the human race, all of us together. What fools we are, what fools we are. And so one thing though that's I find even particularly, I'm not going to say particularly concerning, because I'm going to talk about how, on one hand, I do find it concerning or disappointing. But there's another side to it too, and I want to share that, but still speaking on how I find it disappointing or concerning. What I find extra concerning is that I see that it affects the Vaishnavas. I see that it's penetrating into our communities. I see that we lose our ability to see things clearly. And we also lose our ability to treat each other with respect. So if you're going to ask me for what is my, advice going forward, I would say that no matter what, I'm going to strive not to enter into any kind of hard-hearted conflict with another Vaishnava over this stuff. Because I don't want to waste my life that way. I don't want what tender little devotional creeper that I have. I'm not going to allow it to get wiped out by this stuff. I actually feel strongly about the political situation. but I also realize how insignificant I am, and how my going off on someone else about it is not going to have any effect on it whatsoever. So I'm firmly determined not to enter into conflict with devotees on this. That's one thing. But there's and also just to try to be, as far as possible, if I'm involved with it in any way, to try to be an agent of, a voice of reason and a voice calling for respect amongst the devotees. But there's another part of me that's looking at this time and feeling like I've been waiting my whole life for this time. Like, as a follower of Srila Prabhupada, I've always known that this world could fall apart at any minute. I've always known that this whole thing is unstable. And I've always felt that until things become unstable, people aren't really going to be ready to make a serious change in life, So in one sense, there's part of me that's kind of fearless through this time. That's kind of like, yeah, bring it on. If we've been living like, we've been living completely out of touch with nature, completely out of touch with God, completely out of touch. And of course, the consequences are going to come. And those consequences are going to be scary looking. And I don't want to try to become a prophet or anything, but I expect these next few months, November, December, January, February, I expect things to get pretty messy. I expect there's going to be a lot of fear. There's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of anger. I expect that to come. I'm ready for it. I'm not going to be fearful of it. I do have the faith that Krishna protects the devotees through these things, and that it will be an opportunity for us to share this message, for people to become more receptive to this message. Because when we lose faith in the stability of the material arrangements, we become more open to the wisdom, and if you read Srila Prabhupada's commentaries, first canto and all of that, so much, he's saying the exact things that this world needs to hear, and again, a lot of it has to do with living simply, and I think there's a couple points that are lying at the core of our political situation, the situation with COVID and all these things. And two of them are living simply and caring for the animals, right? Seeing the soul in every living being, right? It's pretty much exactly what I was just saying, right? Living simply and being kind. And I think that we would never get the message until we are so screwed, right? Until our back is against the wall and we're everything's falling apart, that as a nation, as a society, we're going to hear the message. So while part of me looks at the situation and feels pain and disappointment, and I wouldn't say exactly anger. I think I've kind of gone past that in my life, where I don't feel like political anger or anything like that. But another part of me feels like, okay, bring it on. Let's deal with this now. It's going to get a little messy. I'm ready for it to get messy. Things are about to get real, and I'm okay with that too. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know if that's so helpful for people, but I think, especially for the devotees, let's not be afraid. Let's realize that we have Krishna's protection. And as crazy as things get, when the residents of Vrindavan were under Govardhan Hill, they felt they had no anxiety, right? They were there with Krishna. They were protected. I feel Krishna's protection in this time, and I don't feel any fear.
Thank you. That's a great response, and I think it's perfect. I wish every devotee on the planet could hear this, especially the ones who are warring with each other on these trivial political things.
Oh,
thank you,
Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yashoda Dulal Prabhu, I just wanted to add a quick comment there. I just recalling, in response to your question, a class by Rajvihari Prabhu, maybe a month ago or so. I don't remember exactly when. And, the comment that he made that struck me was I've tuned out from all of these political things. I haven't heard the news, I haven't read the papers, and I don't want to know. So that keeps me in my devotional, and I really sympathize with that approach. I see the practicality of wanting to stay, and at least there's some level of connection to know what's going on around us. But at the same time, I just appreciated his idea of just, and him especially working for the federal government, to be able to just tune out of all the political aspects of everything and just do his thing. You know, that was just something that struck me then. So
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's such a cool, interesting point, right? He's living in DC, he's working for the federal government, and yet, you know, he's doing the devotee thing, that it doesn't really matter, you know. And I appreciate, Kaustubha, Prabhu, you so eloquently put it, that it's so important to protect our delicate creeper, because that's what it is. It's such a valuable thing that we have, and these other arguments that go on is unnecessary completely. Thank you. We have a question from Gail Mataji. So Gail Mataji,
Gail, I haven't
Hey,
taken
Prabhu.
a question from Gail in so long. What a pleasure.
I just wanted to give you a break.
was that part of what Krishna was arranging here? No, it's not break. It's a great Vipralamba bhav.
Aww. Oh, I'm so glad I chimed in today. Okay. Yeah, actually, I wanted you to elaborate on when you were saying that Krishna's pastimes are non-different from, you know, his form, his leelas, you know, because the way I've always interpreted that line is, you know, since they're all manifestations of his spiritual energy, you know, that they were somehow identical in that way. But the way you described them today, it was new perspective for me, because you described them as being non-different in the sense that they have equal potency to purify us. So I'm wondering if that's what is really meant by their non-difference, or if other things like what I had said just before, or just can you just elaborate really on this non-difference?
I can try. You know, your questions are always I don't know, very precise, and so I want to be careful that I speak what I actually really know.
Be very careful, Prabhu. Be very careful.
That's right. Be careful around Gail. Well, for instance, we hear that one can become, you know, through any of the 9 practices of devotional service are complete in themselves. Is it not true? Right. So simply by hearing one can completely revive their Krishna consciousness. Can, you know, simply by chanting one can, simply by smarna, simply through remembering Krishna, simply through vandanam, simply through prayers of Krishna, prayers to Krishna. That because when we pray to Krishna, we're associating with Krishna. When we chant Krishna's name, we're associating with Krishna. When we remember Krishna, we're associating with Krishna. When we hear of Krishna, we're associating with Krishna. The idea of for instance, Krishna's name being non-different from him. I accept this on faith, right? And I accept that from my little Dr. Frog position in this world, that it's hard for me to wrap my mind around the idea that in the spiritual realm, the name and the form can be one. Because I live in the material realm where the two are separate, that even when I hear it, it's difficult for me to wrap my mind around it. But on faith, I accept it. Right? On faith, I accept it. And I accept that Krishna's, you know, that all these are the types of meditation that were given in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, right? Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. That I have the faith that these are all manifestations of Krishna's internal potency. That Krishna's name is not in any way material. What is it? Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. that the name and the form of Krishna are one. They're his internal potency, and certainly his Leela is the internal potency, right? And his qualities and his form, you know, that they're all they are all him. And when we absorb the mind in any of them, we're absorbing the mind in him. And none of them lack any, you know, we're given, at the same time, we're given the instruction that it's the holy name that in this yuga is the primary practice, right? But at the same time, we understand that each and every one of these is entirely potent. And I feel that, you know, also as I'm getting older, I'm getting older, so I think about so many things now, you know. I feel as if my life, my practice, you know, that the way that, perhaps the way that my practice may work, if Krishna is kind and merciful to me, if the Vaishnavas are kind and merciful to me, it may be that at the very end of my life, if the devotees are kind to me and Krishna is kind to me, that I might actually be able to chant the holy name, right? That I'm trying now, and I'll continue to try now. But until I've let go of every single of my illusions and all of my attachments and all of this, I have no taste for that name. But hearing the Leelas of Krishna is associating with Krishna, and it increases my desire to chant that name. It helps me understand who that name is, you know. So I see the Leela and the Smarna and all that connected with the name, and I see the name as the primary practice in the sage, because it's been deemed that way, because it's so hard to focus the mind on anything else in this age. But I don't know, that may be the extent of my realization on it. Perhaps other Vaishnavas here could speak further on it.
The way you're explaining it, it sounds like it's probably some mystical, something that we probably can't really fully grasp until we experience it, maybe.
I believe so. Again, like, you see, I think like if you had a devotee, like say a Sadhaputta or something, like they could give us something to grab onto, to understand like how a name, why we might be able to logically understand how a name and a form are different in one realm and the same in another realm. And they would give us some analogy, you know, to help us kind of approach it on some level. Because our experience is so different in this world. Certain things of the spiritual realm are difficult for us to fully conceive of, we accept on faith. But yeah, I think it is mystical in that sense. Right? Otherwise, it just seems like syllables, right? What my understanding is that when I'm chanting the holy name, to a large degree, I'm not actually. I'm just vibrating these syllables. I'm trying to pray and I'm trying to chant that name, but until it's free of offense, Krishna doesn't manifest, or Krishna is manifested, but it's like I'm under a cloud of my own namaparat, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just struggling, you know, trying to, you know, praying and trying to get that realization, but very distracted. You know, that's why I need this month. You know, I need this month to come up every year to remind me to get a little bit more dedicated and realize just how beautiful it is. You know.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
I miss you. I can't wait to see you sometime, and hopefully not too.
Me too. I have this conversation could have definitely extended much more, but I know we are under regulation here, so.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Thank you, Gail Mataji, for that nice question. And we still have a string of questions, but unfortunately, we are also out of time. So we'll have to leave that for another day when Kaustubha Prabhu is here again. Hopefully, he'll be able to make some time some point in the future
If
again.
you want me back.
And must thank you, Kaustubha Prabhu, for a wonderful evening. So, dear devotees, please just hold on for one more moment as we make our regular announcements. So, Kaustubha Prabhu and Raghunath Prabhu do a world famous podcast, like we mentioned earlier. It's called Wisdom of the Sages. So this is available on a number of different platforms. You can go to Apple Podcasts, and you can see this is their spot. You can connect with him on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, and so on. And they get wonderful guests as well, in addition to, of course, speaking themselves. And they do memorable question and answer sessions. You will certainly find a lot of incredible content in this podcast, as thousands of other devotees will attest to. So please do check them out. I think you will not regret it at all. And then, of course, the Bhakti Center is also offering the Pathways to Perfection series, which is very popular, on Saturday mornings, 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. on their Zoom channel, tinyurl.com/Bhakti Center. We've been announcing it pretty much every day on our channel. And we have 2 more sessions in this series left. So upcoming one is Sakhyam, and then the last one is Atma Nivedanam. Of course, Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj and Sachinanda Maharaj will be rounding out this series, something phenomenally popular. You definitely don't want to miss this. So do connect on Saturdays, 9 a.m. And upcoming speakers on this Zoom channel. So we have His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, taking us through the second canto Srimad Bhagavatam in interactive series. This Tuesday we have Achyuta Gopi Devi Dasi. On Thursday we have Shitala Devi Dasi, and she's very famous for having written this incredible book on the life of Narottam Das Thakur. Definitely join for that. You will not want to regret. You know, I will miss it. And then on Sunday we have Venkat Bhatt Prabhu, our very own, from right here in New Jersey. So every night except for Saturday nights, please do join. On Saturday morning, we have that Pathways to Perfection. So thank you once again for joining. I'd like to request Neil Mani Prabhu to lead us in the thanks. When we have a quick word of thanks, then we'll open it up to everybody else to say a quick Haribol to Kaustubha Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Kaustubha Prabhu, for just putting Kartik in such practical, easy to understand terms, and just the basics, reminding us of the basics that we can practice. Just keep it simple. Just at least offer a ghee lamp to Lord Damodar every day, sing Damodar Astakam, read a little bit more, do a little bit more sadhana, a little bit more austerity, and just try to think and remember Krishna a little bit more every day. I mean, that's the message you gave to everybody. And I think it's so easy for us to understand, and hopefully we can all practice that in whatever way we can. So thank you so much, Kaustubha.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Haribol. So anyone like to say a quick Haribol, you can unmute yourselves.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna,
Class,
Dhanwad, Paul.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hi, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to see you again.
Oh, it's been so long. So happy to see you, Mataji.
Hi.
Kaustubha Prabhu, thank you so much.
Athena ji, wonderful to see you.
Such a wonderful class always. So much wisdom, so much nectar, and it's just presented so sweetly. I love hearing you speak, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Thank you, Kaustubha Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Kaustubha.
Haribol, I'm getting showered with thanks to the Vaishnavas here. Kikoji, Yadunath. Such a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna, Dhanwad, Prabhu, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhu ki jai. Samveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Right.
And many, many thanks to Yashoda Dulal Prabhu for arranging this wonderful class. Thank you, Yashoda Dulal Prabhu, as well. And we appreciate all your participation from all the devotees who joined, and especially to His Grace Kaustubha Prabhu. And we hope that he can come again on our channel and enlighten us once more. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.